Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Lower Makefield Township Ad Hoc Property Committee meeting. It is December 19th. We have a quorum here available for the meeting, and we have this is a recently scheduled kind of squeeze-in meeting to with really one agenda item, which is to review the proposals that we received as a result of our RFP process and the process of helping to bring the professional support in creating a master plan for the Patterson Farm property. We have most of the committee members on. We have so we have a quorum. We have Jennifer Stark from will be running that segment of the meeting, and we also have Fred Wise, the Lower Makefield Township Supervisor, as well as some of the invited shareholders that we've wanted to be part of the dialogue input into our meeting. So I see Stephen Hines is on, Jim Majewski is on in those capacities, and Colleen Atera is also on. So we welcome their input as well. If there's no other items, should we shift right into our topic with Jennifer to Bet, you have a.
Are the minutes ready for finals?
The minutes are ready for approval.
They were sent out, yes, I believe so.
Has everyone had a chance to review those minutes, and are there any comments, corrections, edits to those meeting minutes? Hearing none, if I could ask for a motion to approve.
The December 8th minutes.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve those minutes? Thank you, Joe.
Move.
Second, and second, Fred.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, very
Thank
good.
you.
Thank you. So with that, Jennifer, it's a busy week, I know, for everyone here in December. To try to walk us through where we stand in our bidding process and help the committee make some judgments and plan next steps.
Okay, well, good evening, everybody. We put the master plan out to bid. The bids came in on December 14th. We had 5 firms identified, four architects and one landscape architecture firm that has done plans of this caliber. 2 of the architectural firms declined to respond, and the landscape architecture firm joined with a preservation architect who we researched and found them to be acceptable. So we actually received 2 proposals out of the 5. One firm told us they were too busy, and 2 declined. So that's basically 3 dropped out. We have 2 proposals, one from Connolly Hickey and one from Sealer Drury. We received those. Avis and Young took those proposals and pulled apart their contents so that we could do a leveling sheet. That's basically a tool to compare the proposals themselves and try to make an apples to apples evaluation to help the committee see the merits of each proposal and to see where there may be questions to be asked. We recommend that after we go through this leveling sheet, we collect comments from the committee and invite the 2 firms to a virtual interview to talk about their proposal, their project approach, their take on what we're requesting. If there are questions that we collect tonight, we will be able to pose them at that time. And the intent is to help the committee evaluate these proposals further, and ultimately provide a consensus within the committee and then a recommendation to the supervisors. So with that, I'd like to share my screen and open the leveling sheet. Let's see if I can move this out of the way. And this is kind of small. Let me make it bigger. Okay, so I'll go to the top here. Let me slide everybody out of the way. So this is our leveling sheet. You can see we've got Connolly Hickey and we have Seller Jewelry. What we did was we looked at the base fee first. I mean, if I make this a smidge smaller so you can see everything at once, I hope that's okay. I think it'll be helpful. Oh gosh. Just a sec, let me slide a little. No, well, at least you can see the comparison. There's a big difference between these two firms as far as base fee. Connolly and Hickey came in at $134,700, and Seiler Jewelry came in at $74,400. That asterisk means that that number includes their MEP, which is their mechanical, electrical, and plumbing engineers, the structural engineer. In this case for Seiler Jewelry, it also includes their landscape consultant, cost estimating, and their preservation consultant fees. Connolly and Hickey is the same way. They're including MEP structural. They're doing the cost estimating in-house. They have a landscape consultant, and of course, they have a preservation consultant on staff. So it's apples to apples as far as the qualifications and the disciplines that each team is offering.
Jennifer, excuse me. Could you have the display so we can see the labels on the column on the left? Thank you, because it's good to see what the numbers are associated.
Yeah, well, I was going to scoot over here. Yeah, as soon as I got to this next part, because the base fee is the base fee. Sure. So the next item was Connolly and Hickey broke out because we requested this in the proposal, and Seiler Jewelry did not provide it. We asked for them to focus on the main structures on the property, the barns and the homestead houses. We also asked them for additional fees to look at like the structural integrity of the other smaller outbuildings. And so they provided us extra fee to look at these additional properties. That's because we wanted to know what it would cost. And I was thinking about basically a Chinese menu of pricing would give the committee a lot more flexibility to pick what was important to them. And if they wanted to purchase more evaluation and assessment, there would be a cost right there associated with it, and you could make an informed decision. So here you can see what the additional fees would be to do the evaluations.
And Jennifer, under additional fees for Satterswaith, I see a row main barn, 24,500.
Right.
I thought that the main barns were included in the base. The three homes, the three houses, and two main barns. So that.
No, you can see the base here were the two homes and the caretaker's cottage.
Oh, they did not include the, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the question here is we need to know what this value is for Seiler Jewelry. And it's possible I don't know what they did. I don't want to make an assumption. So that's one of the questions we need to ask. Where are all these alternate fees that we requested? And what were they thinking about the base scope of work? One thing that's interesting about Connolly Hickey is they did talk about National Register nomination support. And Seiler Jewelry gave us a price for it. Connolly Hickey did not. Seiler Jewelry also gave us support for architectural documentation of the balance of the outbuildings. So it looks like $3,800 versus these line items on the other side for Connolly Hickey. I would definitely want to dive into that because I don't think that discrepancy is something that we can just ignore.
That's not enough fee to cover all those buildings, $3,800.
Yeah, we need to
If
find
you
out
do
what
the
they
math on their hourly rate divided by that, that's, no time at all.
Yeah, so we need to find out what are they telling us? This total for master plan and all alternates, we tallied that up just so that it was great for information. Nothing there. We did the same thing for Siler Jury, just so we could see a comparison. These proposals are structured pretty differently when you get this breakdown like this. And this is where we want to dive into further questions. One of the items that everybody was very interested in confirming is that there were people on teams that had masters in historic preservation. Both teams do. So we wanted to make that very clear. Another interesting look is the difference between the duration. The project duration for Connolly Hickey was 40 weeks, and the project duration that Siler Jury is anticipating was about 28 weeks. I would love to dive into their schedules that they've provided and ask them how they plan to proceed. Another item that we broke out for you is actually the name of the components of their project team. Jim Huffman, I'm familiar with his practice. He does structural and MEP engineering. So he is like an all-in-one shop. Siler Jury has structural engineering, and then they also have MEP engineering. So it's two separate firms providing structural versus MEP. Cost estimating with Siler Jury is through a firm that does cost estimating. They've been around for decades. I'm familiar with them. Cost estimating for Connolly Hickey is being done in-house. Historic preservation consulting is by Powers and Company for Siler Jury. Bob Powers used to work for the National Park Service. He's been in practice for 3 decades. He's a good, reputable firm. In-house for Connolly Hickey as far as preservation consulting. So landscape architect Simone Collins was the firm that we reached out to originally, and they teamed Siler Jury, so they're on their team. And then John Morgan Thomas is the landscape architect for Connolly Hickey. So we've got comparable skill sets for the teams, which is great. We don't have to ask about that. And then we decided to list relevant projects just so that it would be easy for folks to see the differences between the kinds of work that both firms have done. There's a lot of similarity because preservation projects tend to have a common denominator. All of these projects are shown with photographs and scopes of work described in the RFP. So that's a snapshot of the proposals. I know I just brought up a bunch of questions that I thought that the committee may have, but I do need to hear from the committee to find out what you're truly thinking. I'll document the questions, and we will have the questions written, distributed to the committee so that we're prepared for talking points when we have our interviews.
My first one would be for Siler and Drury is, can they elaborate more on their fee structure? Because I can't see how that math works out for that $3,800.
Yeah, I know, I understand that as well. And I saw that in some of your earlier comments. So duly noted.
I mean, do we understand what they mean by architectural documentation? I mean, the other proposal, Connolly and Hickey, we're talking about AutoCAD for all of the buildings. And I didn't sense the same from Siler and Drury, that they were going into as much detail on that side.
They're supposed to be, because we asked them to do exactly the same thing.
Okay.
We want CAD drawings. We want them plans, floor plans, and elevations. And these are enough to get a sense of the beginning of documenting these buildings more fully down the road.
Mhm.
Jennifer, at what point are they evaluating the structure itself and making recommendations on what needs to be done in terms of repairs, stabilization? So kind of like what's the conclusion we get from these?
Yeah, they're going to go through and they're going to identify obvious issues with their structural engineer. With the scenarios they're proposing, there may be different loading requirements based on the type of use. And so that the structural engineer would be able to comment whether the structure needs to be augmented to support the requirements for a different use. So I'm expecting them to give us prioritized repairs based on immediate need, midterm, and long-term. And that ties in with the scenario of what are they proposing for the use. Yeah.
And Jennifer, if I may, I know the township has done some pretty good structural assessments of the buildings already to date. I think both parties had access to the Google Drive to access that information. And to your point, they basically need to go from there. And once they're trying to figure out what uses, that could change what they need to really do and prioritize.
Correct. So yeah, the archival stuff that the township has already provided, we'll make sure that they have the team that gets the job gets that again, as well as any documentation for preferred or preferences from stakeholders. So there's information that these teams will get beyond what they have right now to jumpstart their work.
And Jennifer, on the cost estimating, I mean, I'm operating on the premise that within the contract, their fees include a number of estimates given varying uses. It's not, here's one use, here's a cost estimate. If you want to ask about a different use, there's an upcharge or something, right? They can run a number of scenarios on each building depending on the scenario that of the committee.
Yeah, we asked for 3.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. So that's what we purchased in our base scope of work.
Okay.
Jennifer, can I come ask a question, one that Beth asked last night on email, which was regard to the planning. It seems like, in both cases, they go about at least a third of the way through the project. They actually finished our condition assessments before they start looking at potential uses. But why would you not start by looking at potential uses? Because wouldn't that affect the way you did your condition assessment and developed your treatment recommendations?
Partially. I'll tell you this. I have a feeling that we're going to feed them stakeholder information up front. Meanwhile, they're going to be doing condition assessment. Now, all these buildings are going to have conditions that need to be addressed regardless of what the proposed use will be. Mm-hmm. And at this stage, not much is going to change between an assessment of the foundation needs to be worked on, regardless if it becomes stays a barn or if it's turned over for public assembly or something else. When you get into a higher level of a scenario for adaptive reuse, then a condition assessment may go, well, you know what, your mechanical system will run, it will keep the pipes from freezing, and it'll be stable, but it's not going to be really comfortable for everyday, like 8 hours a day habitable use. If you want habitable use, we would recommend that you augment with this or something like that. So, you know what I mean? It's an additive process of recommendations. So the beginning is pretty level. It's pretty level. As soon as they get more information about what stakeholders are looking for, more information about what the buildings are telling them, and then their own informed decisions based on their experience and what the site is telling them, it's going to coalesce.
Okay. Okay.
I have a question for Jim Majewski. Jim, I know the township has done a number of engineering assessments over the years. Are there some of those that are recent enough, young enough that that these engineers can rely quite a bit on those and maybe, do supplemental work, but I'm looking at, how much money we could be saved in some of these assessments if they're able to lean on the township assessments, if they're fresh enough, if they're, recent enough.
I think we have all of the buildings assessed anywhere from, I think it's 2014, we did an assessment of a number of the buildings, and then we did the remainder of the buildings just last year, I believe it was.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So
those are fresh. I mean, at least some of the ones last year should
Right.
be quite an efficiency in this undertaking, right?
yeah, they're not that far out of date. And, as Jennifer had pointed out, when you start to figure out what the potential uses are, then you need to go look into it more closely to see, like when you and I discussed putting hay in the barns. I mean, we can do a simple calculation on that and say, here's what you need to do that. But for other uses, it may require more in-depth work by them.
Right. Okay. All right.
I know this stage isn't, we're not getting sealed drawings, but there may be some concern from the firm's structural engineers relying on some other previous studies that may or may not be complete in their regard.
Mm-hmm.
I can address that. It's very common to inherit archival information. What you do is you go out in the field and you verify. So they'll be doing their own survey work, creating their own plans, but also to have the reference of plans prepared by others is always helpful. But you certainly don't take those and assume them as your own.
My initial concern with these two proposals is that wide variation in the both the total fees and the schedule. We initially had, your estimate was maybe about 6 months to prepare the plan, and they're coming up with 7 to 10 months, looks like. But especially the fee difference, when I've seen construction bids or even professional proposals, if you see much more than a 10 or 20, as much as a 20% difference in fees, that raises a lot of questions. And in this case, it's almost an 80% increase from one to the other. So, and when you add in the additional fees that were listed by Conley and Hickey, you're almost a three times difference. I know as you said, Seiler and Drury didn't include all those details for the additional buildings, but that's certainly a big question. I mean, if I saw a proposal or a bid that low compared to the other, I would have to question whether they even had a full grasp of the scope or the magnitude of this property to begin with. Did both firms participate in that site visit?
Yes.
Okay, so it just raises a lot of flags. And we didn't have, I don't know, what's your feeling in the ballpark? Is Conley and Hickey in the ballpark, or is that way out of line too?
I think that they're high if you take everything into consideration. I think that their base fee is in the ballpark where I would expect it. Professional fees are easier to dissect than a contractor's fee because we're talking about investigation and services. So being able to ask them pointed questions, it's not like a bid where you have sub-bidders providing numbers and then things being marked up and general conditions being added onto it. This is just a pure service fee. So I think it's easier to dive into these two and break them apart. And that's why the interview process is going to be very helpful for us, because we'll be able to see where potentially things were missed or things were over analyzed.
Right, understood. The other concern with, I think Connolly and Hickey, they mentioned 4 fairly relevant, it looks like, projects, and they also added the project cost as a comparison. The ones that, I mean, from just the information that they gave us from Seiler and Drury, didn't look to be the kind of magnitude that we would be dealing with in this case. They also seem to have a lot of emphasis because of Simone Collins' landscape architecture being part of the team, that landscape and trails and that sort of, parks and rec kind of idea may be more involved in their idea or concept at this point.
That's a good thing to dive into, correct?
Yep.
Can I add a point that starting at this juncture, what you're suggesting, Jennifer, is that you have to go back and ask them some questions. I would say perhaps a graphic that you can release to each of them, not necessarily with the numbers attached, but with the fulfillment of the conditions or the requirements of the bid as a check mark in each area that they did. Mm-hmm. So you take your list and you go down and say, okay, you've filled in this one, this one, this one. We didn't see any answer, whether it was included or not. We didn't see any specific answer to this one, this one, and this one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a pretty direct way to show them where they've left something off. Right, when you were talking, I was thinking of something and I didn't want to interrupt you, and now I forgot what it was.
That happens.
I know.
But I was thinking of the same thing that Steve was, that prior to any interviews or anything else, if we could go back to each bidder with that kind of guidelines, and I think Steve's idea is a good graphic way to present it, of here's what we have from one but not from the other. Here's your missing piece, perhaps, or something, would be very useful in to have before any interview.
I agree. I remember what it was. Connolly Hickey was very short on their basic meetings. I think they only had 4. We need more meetings. Seiler Drury really talked about and understood what it's like to work for a public entity and have to attend multiple meetings. So that's one area where I thought they got it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, along those lines, they also, Connolly and Hickey, had 2 weeks for township review and comments on their various stages of the reports, which is, absurd.
Right.
No, I have to say, Seiler and Drury, their verbiage I liked more, but I liked the detail that Connell and Hickey showed, and it's trying to reconcile those, as you say, their services. But I think if we could have more of those rows that are in common across the 2 proposals in your leveling sheet, it would help answer a lot.
Yeah.
Other observations?
I have a question, Jennifer. When we get to the interviews, do we need to have standard questions for each of them, or are we open?
I like to do both. I like to have standard questions for both. And then if something arises from the responses you're getting, it turns into a dialogue.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what is our time frame for setting those up?
I was turning that over to Jim for availability. I was hoping we could do it the first full week, starting January 3rd.
Jennifer, this going back to them before the interview, that's something that could happen this week, and
Yes,
they would have adequate time.
yes, I would like to give them the tentative, the day and time for the
Okay.
interview, and I'd like to give them the, I think what we're going to do is create what Steve recommended and give them an outline of where they missed components, and then some of these initial questions, so they're prepared to start talking immediately when we get together with them.
Currently, for the schedule, I know the first week in January, the 3rd is the reorganization meeting of the Board of Supervisors. So Tuesday, the 3rd is out. Wednesday, we have the Zoning Hearing Board meeting at 7:30. Thursday, I think the EAC typically meets then, but they meet earlier. They meet at 5 or 6 o'clock. So that later time slot, 7:30, I think is open on the 5th, which is a Thursday.
Okay.
And as I
Our
mentioned,
regularly scheduled committee meeting is the following Thursday, January 12th. That's already on calendars and on the books. So I don't know what the availability is, what everyone's availability is on the 5th, but the 12th is a fallback for sure. Is there how does the 5th look for the committee right now? Can you say, or?
If we could get them to do the 5th, I think that'd be great. And if that does happen on the 5th, then we can cancel the 12th. And if we need another meeting in January, we can put one on further along.
Yeah.
not
Well-
available.
Wait a minute, question, Joe. Question anyway. If we meet on the 5th, we're interviewing. Isn't the meeting on the 12th then still necessary to make a selection and then get on the Board of Supervisors for the 18th? Or do I have something amiss?
Well, it's depending on what comes out of the interview is
Right.
that answer. So, I mean,
Do we even get on the 18th if we have a meeting on the 12th?
I believe so. If you have a recommendation to make on the 12th, typically the agenda goes out on Thursday. You know, might be a day late. I'm not sure. I'll have to check.
Yeah.
If the recommendation is made by Thursday before the meeting, and we get it on Friday, the backup, we can have it on the agenda probably for the 2nd January meeting. But I think the timeline, if I'm not mistaken, we wanted to have a recommendation for the board by the 2nd February meeting. So
I thought
that was the base timeline, if I remember correctly.
You're going to argue we're going faster?
No, if you guys think you can do it, but I don't want you to go nuts over.
Yeah.
whether we do it.
Yeah, okay.
You know, I want the process to be complete. So
No,
don't feel you need to rush it.
Okay.
No, I don't think we should. And this is but it does pay to look ahead at these meeting thresholds on the calendar to see if we can make a sooner one. Great. If we can't, but I saw Fred say that he was available on the 5th. I think
No, not available.
not available.
Not
Oh, I'm
available.
sorry. Okay. Joe, Bet,
I'm okay.
Jim, John.
I can do the 5th.
Yeah, 5th is good.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we can get a quorum. Let's hold that date. Like I say, we have the 12th. We have the 5th. We're not going to let anything go until we know more. but let's get that, let's get that on everyone's calendar if we could. All right.
What time are you thinking for the 5th? 7 or 7:30?
7:30 is the slot. There's a 6 o'clock slot and a 7:30 slot with the Zoom organizing firm. All right. Other questions, issues that Jennifer should go back to these bidders with prior to our interviews?
So Jennifer, I think both of them, I was really happy to see that they talked about involving key stakeholders and potential uses, and as well as looking at other, nearby sites to gain some inspiration. But I would like a little bit more detail in terms of how they intend to do that. Again, we talked about this at our last meeting. Is there an overall public forum where we invite people? How do we involve the neighbors, especially those in close proximity to the farm, and all of those types of things? So I would like them to spend more time understanding who they're interviewing and how they're going to bring those people together and generate ideas.
Okay, that's basically asking them about their approach and their process, and that's a good question.
I think going back to your concern about Seiler and Drury not listing out the additional fees for the outbuildings. In addition to that, both of them would need to indicate then what, if we had some or all of those buildings included, what would that do to their schedule?
Okay, thank you.
To the point that I think someone made, I think it might have been Fred. Do we want to ask Seiler and Drury when they cite some comparable or relevant project experience to also include the project cost or the size, the scope, like Conley and Hickey did? Would that be helpful to help understand the relevance of those
I think so.
projects?
Okay, got it. Thanks.
I'm just going to keep beating my dead horse because I enjoy it. I just did some fun quick math. We have a number of 259 hours for Seiler and 2,090 hours if you take everything for Connolly and Hickey. So there's some scope differentials on a massive scale that we need to nail down. And going through their scope and what they really think that they're including is the difference. Because that's 8 times, and that's a lot. So,
yeah, John, I did some thumbnail math, and I got different numbers, but it's still a big difference. I
took their fee, and I
hours.
did the project manager rate, and I just hit it. So,
okay.
But still, any way you're going to divide the math at this point, it's just big numbers.
Yeah.
And it's very skewed because the Seiler and Drury is missing all those buildings.
Yeah.
For costs.
Yeah, right.
Although somewhere in their narrative, they do touch on as if they're looking at all the buildings.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that definitely needs to be clarified.
Okay. What else? I really appreciate the committee digging through these 2 proposals. It shows, and it's important you did so. Jim, I'm curious, not to put you on the spot, Jim Majewski, sorry. What were both of these, were either of these base prices in your expectations range? I mean, you probably in your work have more of a sense of what you expected on these costs than certainly than I.
Well, I know when the board budgeted up to 300,000, I thought that was a little bit high. And just off the top of my head, without really putting too much thought into it, I was thinking it was like 500 to 800 hours worth of work, which would equate to, or actually more like 700 to 1,000 hours worth of work, which comes up to be about 100,000 to 250,000. So they're kind of in that range.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. All right. Other comments, other questions?
beyond-
Jennifer, go back. Yes.
I was going to say, just beyond the buildings, and I'm trying to remember which of the proposals it was. Someone mentioned looking more at the landscape, not like plants and things like that, but in general, the layout, right, and how traffic would move in and among the, in among the buildings based on the uses. And, I'd like to make sure that we're level. If we're not getting that in one and not getting that in the other, because that could really be a big contributing factor to us determining what the potential uses are, especially if there's any kind of use that could disturb, or put the farmland at risk. So I'd like to make sure that they're thinking, beyond just the buildings themselves to the site and how that would be managed, what changes would need to be made there.
Mm-hmm.
Got it.
Agreed. Jennifer, do you have a pretty good list, you think?
I do have a good list.
And I would just say that if anyone thinks of another question or comment that Jennifer could go back to them with prior to the interview or during the interview, please just let us know. Email myself and Jennifer. We want to control some of the traffic going to Jennifer when we can, but this is I think this is a good start.
Jim, in the background information that you gave them, did you include the prior submissions for the National Register for Patterson?
I gave them the link to Google OneDrive we had for the whole ad hoc committee, which has all of that stuff. Has all of the assessments, reports, all of the prior historical data that have been compiled when they did I-95, when we had submitted the application. I think that even included the comments coming back from the state on our nomination.
Okay, good. Yeah, because they should know that there's been a significant amount of work done, and that was actually done by the Heritage Conservancy, if I recall correctly. So a lot of what they're proposing in terms of the historical significance, I believe we already have that.
Jim, was our final report included there?
Yes.
I thought so, but
Your final report was included in the actual RFP.
okay. All right. If I could ask, is there any other business from the committee before we go to public comment?
Will you share the questions with us, Jennifer?
Yes.
Yes, Jennifer is going to compile those, right? And you'll share them back with the committee.
Yes.
Yep. So there's opportunity to refine and expand. Okay. Any other, one other business note, a few of us after the last meeting talked about organizing a potential subcommittee on community outreach and being sure we get, full involvement of the community. And I think Bet had volunteered to weigh in on that. No? That's saying no?
I have a lot of experience. I was actually the public participation coordinator for a time at DEP, but I do not want to chair that. Thank you.
I didn't say, I just said
Okay.
you volunteer to be part of it. Okay, but are you still want to be part of it?
Yes.
Okay, all right, all right. There's no forced volunteering.
But I think in our discussion, we determined that that was part of the process, that whichever consultant would be doing it would be shepherding.
Absolutely, that's a part of it, but I'm thinking a subgroup of this committee or committee could be working with that contractor on that very topic. So that was the idea. Okay.
So I'm happy to help out there.
Okay. Thank you, Fred. Appreciate that. All right. If no other business, let's open it up for public comment. John, is there any public comment?
No public comment.
Okay. All right. Hearing none, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you all. Appreciate the time. I know it's a busy time of year, but I'm telling you, this is a critically important project, and 2023 is going to see quite a transition. Thank you for all your help. Jennifer, thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Appreciate your leadership.
You're welcome.
All right. Good night.
Good night. Happy holidays, everyone.